You are listening to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all the latest news, Overwatch League results, and mishaps in Overwatch. Here are your hosts, Totemly Drunk and Edinar.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things Overwatch. I am your host, Totemly Drunk, and tonight on episode 177, we'll let you know what's been going down in regards to the latest in Overwatch and Overwatch eSports. We'll take a look at some of this week's hot community topics straight out of the OWL playoffs. We'll reflect on what went down in the first week of the playoffs, and of course, we'll preview all of the stuff that's going to go down this week as we determine which two teams will be facing off in this year's OWL Grand Finals in Philly. But before we can jump into the news and introduce you to my co-host, let me just quickly take a moment to thank everyone who is joining us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and of course thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Edinar. And Ed, it's been a wild week. We have NFL kickoff. We've had a lot of drama revolving around NFL. We had our podcaster fantasy football draft, which I had auto draft, which is whatever, but it worked out okay so far. We'll see if that pans out throughout the entirety of the season. But we've had all of this stuff happening on top of the Overwatch League playoffs. There's a lot of things to be excited about, but how has the past week been treating you?
It's been okay. It's been a week of highs and lows. So you got the highs of the NFL, that came back, awesome, ultimate high right there. And then it's okay, I want to go play classic WoW. Oh well, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I want to watch the Overwatch League on Twitch. Oh well, shit, somebody screwed that up. Got to switch over to the command center. So yeah, it was highs and lows. Overall, it was a good week. All in, it was a good weekend of Overwatch League. Got some classic WoW in, played some Overwatch.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to get too rusty for my silver placements. Huzzah! It's. I figure if I play silver, I'm one level below Choi. And I'm okay with this. It's like Choyoben Edinar.
Yeah,
right
you end up getting benched after going up 3-0 in favor of running Nevix.
Yes, because that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And Krusty, we do not trusty. But it's been good. It's been a lot of fun. Seen some good movies. So, how's your weekend been?
It's been pretty good. Obviously, the weekends are usually pretty hectic. But the playoffs really delivered. It turns out all of our predictions were not 100% accurate, but you know what? We can basically say the same thing about literally every single person. So there is that. It's been a good week though. I've been enjoying it. I've been dabbling a little bit in Diablo 3 during some off hours, since some people haven't been logging into WoW Classic for a couple of days, so I ended up leveling a Barbarian 2 nights ago. So I already went got that to max level.
Still have never played that game.
I've gotten up to Greater Rift 80? But I'm still pushing, but I got most of the gear for the build I was wanting to run. It's just a matter of improving my progression at this point, so I've been jumping into that quite nicely. But I'm excited. We got some pretty big matches. We got some pretty hype matches this week. Probably some unexpected teams in certain spots, which we'll definitely get into. But let's go ahead and jump into the news. So really quick, just as a follow-up, because the whole Nintendo Switch announcement kind of got posted during the show. It was leaked ahead of time before the Nintendo Direct, but we didn't actually go into all of the details when it comes to the Switch release. So just as a reminder, guys, Overwatch is coming to the Nintendo Switch. Just in case you missed it, the first 8 times it was posted on .eSports, which I'm still mad about. And there was another one yesterday. I don't know what the writers are doing, but I'll probably write a very, very ranty tweet to them about it. Because it's all from like 2 or 3 people. It's just like, guys, okay, we get it. But Overwatch coming to the Nintendo Switch October 15th. And a lot of the questions revolving around this port was how the game would be running on the hardware, just because the Switch hardware is weaker when you compare it to that of the PS4 and the Xbox One, who both operate the game at 1080p and 60 FPS. Well, in this case, Blizzard is trading performance in order to make the game portable. Honestly, not that much of a surprise. I'm sure it's going to be the same case, like with a game like The Witcher 3, like the other major port that gets released that week. And it's important to note, like right now in the current meta, knowing how much visual clutter there is, that can be kind of demanding in regards to processing power, even on like low-end PCs. So of course it's going to affect things kind of like across the board. So when it comes to the Switch, the game is going to be running at 30 FPS with outputs of 900p when you have the system docked, and then when it's undocked, so when you have it in handheld, it would be running at 720p. Now in regards to Switch exclusives, we're not getting any crazy Nintendo stuff, unfortunately. You are going to get a golden loot box if you order by the end of the year, which, guarantees a legendary. We've seen a couple of those pop up from time to time. And if you pre-purchase, you also get the Noir Widowmaker skin, which, most of us probably have at this point on other platforms. And then, of course, we also have the 15 bonus skins, and then the 3-month membership for Nintendo Online, which, honestly, comparatively, the Nintendo Online fee is so much cheaper than, like, Xbox or PS4. That's honestly not that big of a deal, but the cost for the game is $39.99. Now, Ed, I know you and I were talking about, like, well, should I wait until the game is on sale? How much is it going to be at launch? And, I was looking back at how many copies of the game I have.
It's more than 5. It has to be more than 5.
It is.
Okay.
I have my PS4 account.
Okay. I'm keeping track here.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull up my notepad.
You have a spreadsheet for your accounts. This is a good sign.
I have my main account, obviously.
Okay.
I have Tipsy.
Okay.
Boozy.
Mm-hmm.
Turnt.
Okay.
Loopy.
Okay.
And Nana.
Okay, so you got 7
I have
accounts. This
7.
will be 8.
And this will be 8th, because I did pre-order. Jesus.
I think you have a problem.
It's worth noting, like, whenever I did buy, like, alt accounts, it was always after the free-to-play weekend, so I never paid full price at that point. But, like, it's so funny, like, looking back, and everyone's just like, why?
Who has more alt accounts, you or Spider?
I honestly don't know.
Spider has an insane amount. Like, he has specific alt accounts just for heroes. Like, okay, this is my Doomfist only account. This is my Ana only account. Like, I would put Spider at 10 accounts.
This is my Slum It with Edinar account.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts. Yet true, but it still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Although my alt account, I don't know what I'm placing at, because I've never done any form of placements.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to see what goes on there. But I don't know. This is a good thing for the Switch. I think that they went to they embraced more of the mobility of the Switch by dropping the the FPS and stuff like that, so it could be more mobile, because that's the whole appeal of the Switch. It's like you can play it on your TV, you can pick it up and go. Like, that's the thing. Like, imagine, like, all right, I'm laying in bed and playing Overwatch. Like, that's an ideal scenario. It's the mobile game like dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's why Fortnite is now playable on phones and stuff like that, because for that exact reason.
Yeah, we've seen basically all the battle royale games ended up going that route. We'll see whether or not down the road we'll ever get like crossplay between consoles. There's a lot of like tech issues involved with that, and of course, the companies actually have to be on board to communicate with one another. Um,
It does go well for Blizzard because we have the Blizzard app, like the launch. So it's kind of like Steam, because like Destiny is in the process of going through this.
Right.
So Destiny, well, just did on September 1st went cross-play or cross-save between Xbox, PlayStation, and PS3, but they took it off the Blizzard's launcher.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're going through Steam, so they have a platform to go through. And the reason they're getting off the Blizzard launcher to do this is because, well, Activision got rid of Destiny. So Destiny is no longer part of Activision Blizzard. But like using the app launcher or the Blizzard launcher, or BattleNet, I think is what it's technically called, is something that they could use. They would just have to implement it on Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That might be the tricky part.
Right. So outside of that, as you mentioned towards the top of the show, we did have some issues in regards to server stability over the past week, as there were a lot of DDoS attacks that were impacting not only World of Warcraft Classic, but also Overwatch as well. So a lot of this was kind of going down on September 7th during midday and early in the afternoon. I know in my case, I tried for like the first 30 minutes, like, okay, well, how long is this going to go on? And it lasted, honestly, for several hours. It was an ongoing thing throughout the late afternoon. So that being said, I know that the Overwatch team has been cautioning players to kind of like avoid competitive until they confirm that all of the issues have been completely cleared. Just because you can always have some sort of like disconnection issues being caused by lingering problems from these attacks. But it definitely hasn't been to the same extent as what we saw on September 7th and September 8th. I don't know if it's fully cleared yet. But, you know, they usually keep things and details in regards to DDoS attacks under wraps. So, you know, they don't like to really release that info, and I know, you know, there was a lot of fans that were kind of agitated by that because, like, there were already issues happening, and then they waited a while in order to tweet it out on, you know, the Blizzard customer service Twitter account.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get this out of the way first. Get the bleep ready. If you DDoS, you're a piece of shit. Like, plain and simple. You're just an asshat. So let's just get that out of the way. Like, you get some sort of sick joy out of making other people not enjoy their time. You get no benefit from this. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not monetary, nothing. You're just a piece of shit. Like, these are the people who think, like, they're not even, Reddit's too good for them. Like, Reddit is up here, and these POSs are down here.
Yeah, I would bring something up, but I would not feel comfortable putting it in podcast form, but it does involve, you know, kind of one of the ongoing things in regards to NFL and a certain AP story, which I'm not going to get into, but it's just like, you have some people that are cheering for something to have happened, you know, and it's like, are people's anti-Pats that strong that
cheering for this to be right?
Yeah,
means something horrible happened.
Disgusting, yeah.
But it did affect more than just those days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just on I think it was Saturday was the first day that it was a big problem.
Yeah, the 7th and the 7th was like the primary day, but I still was having issues the day after as well.
Yeah, like, I couldn't even get onto Whitemane, the server we're on, Sunday night. Like, the world server was down. Now, this not only affected Overwatch and WoW Classic, but if I was to believe Twitter and some of the casters, Twitch was getting DDoS.
Yes, they were.
So during the Overwatch League, Twitch was getting DDoS. Now you could switch over to the command center, and that was not being affected. I'm assuming because it's on a different server of some sort. But Twitch was even being DDoSed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I read somewhere on Reddit, and now granted this may not be true, but there was a reward out for the person who was doing this. Which, vigilante justice via Reddit, that's always going to end well.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't get it. Like, I don't get the point of a DDoS.
So much of it has to just be seeking attention, but like it's not the attention that you want because you know you're gonna get caught.
Well, like the thing is they're not doing like I would even like I wouldn't understand it, but like if it brought attention to the person, then yes, I could be like, okay, they're just trying to seek attention. But we don't know who does these things.
Right.
Like this is completely anonymous. They're just doing this because they are horrible.
Yeah, there have been instances in the past though where we've seen companies seeking hackers to try to break certain things with operating systems, trying to find faults and things like that, but this is a completely different ballgame.
Like DDoSers are one step below swatters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if you SWAT somebody, then you're putting lives at risk. Obviously, DDoSing is not at that level, but it's one step below that. Like, because you're doing it for no gain on your end.
I mean, Asmongold was still making plenty of money, even when he couldn't get onto the servers,
Because he just watches YouTube
mm-hmm.
and then comments on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine that is your professional job. What do? I watch YouTube videos and comment on them live, generally calling them idiots and disagreeing with them.
Yeah.
Like, that guy has the cushioniest job ever.
Mm-hmm.
Also a girlfriend that is way out of his league, but that's for a different time.
I think that goes with the Twitch.
That goes back to what is the Anna Nicole Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to Overwatch talk, guys. In regards to the PTR, there has been kind of like a hidden nerf that has been kind of like going under the radar, and it kind of targets the current double barrier meta. Now, since Sigma was released, we have seen the pairing of Sigma and Orisa as the tank combo. That's been running rampant, which has allowed heroes like Doomfist to really thrive in the current meta, as he's just attacking straight through the shields. Well, in the PTR patch 1.4, and this is in regards to Sombra and hack interaction with Sigma. So when Sombra hacks Sigma, his deployed barrier is completely gone for the duration of the hack. So that would keep Sigma's barrier more in line with like a Reinhardt shield whenever Reinhardt is hacked. And I know the developer team already commented on this. Some people are wondering whether or not that this was a bug. And this is not a bug, this is intentional, so potentially, this might be, the start of some more Sombra play as more of a counter towards Sigma outside of, just the Doomfist that have just kind of been punching through walls. And, through barriers, in this case.
I like this change. Now, they're probably classifying it as a, this was always supposed to be this way. Mm-hmm. That's why it was like behind the scenes and not announced. I'm interested to see like this will obviously change things, but it's yet I don't know which side of the coin I fall on. Of okay, Sombra is going to become meta, or is Sombra countering Sigma by doing this enough to take Sigma out of the meta, thus negating the need for Sombra. You know what I mean? Like just the threat of
Orisa.
Yeah, it's the threat of them switching to Sombra that makes you not pick Sigma.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like Tracer. Like, you know, the threat of them playing Brig makes you not play Tracer. Type of situation. So I don't know which side of the coin I'm falling on. At this point, probably more so on the Doomfist Sombra combo. But what's holding me back from that is the lack of damage.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
like, if
with
you
the
hack...
EMP charge rate being so slow, you know, that also is going to come into play here.
Yeah, like, and if you hack Sigma, your Doomfist has to be right in there. Otherwise, it's pointless because Sigma right now is still pretty hard to kill. Like, Sigma's beefy. And just having a Sombra and a Doomfist solely concentrating on that Sigma might not be enough.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what could maybe lead me towards no Sombra and no Sigma. And if that's the case, then who the hell knows what's going to happen? Because then if you don't have double shield tank, then you probably don't have Doomfist. Because Doomfist is so popular because you have double shields. Like, it's one of those things where this could either do nothing to the meta and just make it be like Sombra Doomfist, or the entire meta gets thrown out the window.
I do find it funny how every time Doomfist becomes meta, it's out of necessity.
Doomfist is probably, like, I effing hate Doomfist. But, like, from a watching perspective, Doomfist is so much fun. Like, Doomfist is so much fun to watch. Like, those crazy entries into fights, the uppercuts, like, he's one of the most fun characters to watch in the Overwatch League. But, yeah. I don't know. Well, he does seem broken.
He's not coming to Smash Brothers, nor are, you know, any other Overwatch heroes.
Was that announced?
Well, like, there were a lot of rumors about, like, the Nintendo Direct about that potentially happening, but we got the Overwatch announcement for Switch.
Okay.
A lot of people are being hopeful. Not happening. They announced some other
You mean
Smash.
the internet overreacted to something?
Shocking, I know.
That's like me overreacting or saying something nonsensical.
Yeah, which is, like, all the time.
I don't do that. I still want super, despite Ramsey shaking his head at me last night, I still want super aggressive Orisa from Super. It's gonna happen.
You know, you also thought Architect would get played in more.
Yeah, well, you also thought Rascal was gonna play all the time.
We were both wrong. But,
like,
you know what? I will take my
failed
win
at that one
where I can get it.
Yeah. Who thought that's like, hey, you're going to have a Reaper out here. You know who they're going to bring in? Their Tracer player.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting swaps in regards to the Blast, which we'll definitely get into. And one of them we're actually going to talk about right now, because there was a certain DPS player that kind of just, like, vanished from the London Spitfire during the losers bracket on September 7th. And this is something that caught a lot of people off guard. Well, they also caught Guard, because Guard was in place of this person. So Birdring was down and out. There was no comment from Birdring. There was no explanation given from the London Spitfire. And after the London Spitfire match, Birdring basically went on social media over on his Instagram page, posted, like, a blank picture just saying, like, thank you all for the support. I'm sorry for the late season. I've lost a lot of motivation, and I'm still confused about my future plans. And then he apologized again. Now, since this post, Birdring has deleted his Twitter account. He's seemingly off the grid. And then you have the London Spitfire social media manager, Matthias Portillo, who deleted this tweet, but of course, you know, Reddit screen grabbed it, posted it immediately, and the tweet was, imagine getting knocked out of the OWL playoffs because of a kid's attitude. So there's a lot of questions in regards to where Birdring was. You know, I joked about, like, maybe he was already packing London's bags, kind of like the whole story that we heard about last year, where they ended up actually winning their match, and eventually they were the champions. We don't know where Birdring is. He just wasn't on stage at the time, but the Spitfire are down and out, which of course we'll get into in more detail, but it does raise a lot of questions about what Birdring's future is, not just on the London Spitfire, but also as an esports player as well.
Could you go as far to say Birdring flew the coop? Yeah? No? All right, fair enough. That was a really bad one. I will admit that.
I'm trying not to cough as you say that.
Like, every once in a while we hear things like this. Like, the pressure gets to them, right. They get annoyed with their team. I mean, this wasn't even the only Overwatch League player where this dramatic thing happened to this week. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you didn't have it in there, but I'm going to bring it up, is Bumper. Bumper deleted his social media. Like,
did he?
Like, yeah, he did. He deleted his Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. And, so it wasn't just him. It just, this kind of stuff happens. And when you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, as a 36-year-old with elderly wisdom, when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, you make rash decisions off the cusp. I mean, you make that anytime. You just always seem to make them more when you're younger. It's just what happens. So something probably happened that really pissed Birdring off or annoyed him, or the coaches basically are like, hey, you need to step up. And they take it too personally. And they go on these rampages or rants or disappear or become toxic. Stuff like that happens. And when you have an entire league of people in that age bracket, that's going to happen. And the argument against this that I've heard is, well, what about, college players? Well, college players aren't being paid money. Like, they're in school, they're on scholarship, but their playing does not revolve around their salary. Like, maybe their salary in the future, but at that moment, Birdring is playing for, I don't know, $75,000 a year type of situation. That's what he's playing for, and that's what he's overreacting to. He's like, this is his livelihood. This is, how he makes his living and doing what he loves. And you take that a little more personally when things start to go wrong, or maybe the coaches say something wrong to you, or you take things the wrong way, or something like that. And it's just bound to happen. It's not like it's not going to happen again. Probably will happen at least once a stage, because that's what it kind of seems to be. Is once a stage, we have one player who has a mental breakdown and is out. Like, it was Crystal doing whatever the hell Crystal did. We still don't know about that stuff last stage. So, it's unfortunate. We'll see where it goes from here. Maybe just a new surrounding will help him after this season.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, at the end of the day, yes, the Overwatch League still is fairly new, but there's still a lot of growing up to do, both from the league side of things and also the players, just because so many of them are on the younger side of, the age demos at this point, since a lot of them are 18 and 19 years old. Now, outside of that, this was also something that happened during the playoffs. Obviously, with so much on the line, we've had a lot of emotions over the past week. They've been doing a lot of post-game interviews, both with the people that are winning the matches, as well as those teams that are exiting the playoffs, like the London Spitfire and the Seoul Dynasty being the other team. And I know there's been a lot of a little bit of uproar about whether or not you should do exit interviews, and you and I really have no issue with that. But a lot of the complaints were basically stemming from Jay Hahn's interview after the Seoul loss to the Hangzhou Spark. And, you know, obviously, like, Jaehyun took him a little bit to kind of, like, collect himself, because he was very emotional. Obviously, as you mentioned, like, this is basically, like, their livelihoods. There's a lot of expectations set on Seoul as that Korean squad, the only one from Korea at this point. And, you know, Jaehyun took it pretty hard. Obviously, like, he sent out a tweet saying, like, he agrees that he's the biggest bust in the Overwatch League. But, you know, he's saying he's always tried his best. And he went on, like, this long, drinking day and ended up, like, streaming, which was, like, completely translated. And he was kind of, like, shaking his fist at Toby and Jexay not performing better in the playoffs, which was kind of a funny takeaway from all of that. But, like, the amount of talk about the interview process was really confusing to me. It's not like these guys don't have the option to not take the interview. And, you know, a lot of people were, like, memeing about it, which is just stupid, but, you know, there was so much of an uproar about, like, the way that the league went about doing interviews. Like, this is something new. Like, no, we see this happen in other sports. It's not just exclusive to the Overwatch League, but it just kind of rubbed people the wrong way, like shoving a microphone in someone's face when they're, quote, like, at a low point, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I get why some people are upset about it, but honestly, it's part of... This is your job. Plain and simple. Like, your job is to go out there and play, yes. The other part of your job is to do brand awareness and deal with marketing and do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is 25-30% of your job right there, is to do things like this. So yes, you're gonna interview people. What's more interesting to the average viewer? Jaehong and Toby, like, emotionally losing it during an interview, or, you know, interviewing one of the winners and then being like, you know, we're really focused on our next match. This was a great win. Seoul Dynasty played their heart out, so, you know, they're tough competition, and then that being the end of it. Mm-hmm. What's more interesting from a viewer perspective?
Yeah, plus it also drives home the point of that emotional connection you have with a team in that situation.
Mm-hmm. So, like, I have zero problem with them interviewing. Like, zero problem whatsoever. Unpopular opinion coming at you. Jaehong is the biggest bust. Like, let's be real. Like, who's a bigger bust in the Overwatch League than Jaehong?
Here's the thing that I have with this argument. Yes, there does have to be someone, but the league is so new, and we've had a number of we've had a number of rosters built around core Overwatch squads, pre-Overwatch League. And the difference between the Lunatic High core and, say, Envy, Rogue, Misfits, they're still there. You can't say the same about some of these other, quote, powerhouse teams that were around in a similar time frame to when Lunatic High was still going on. Hell, you know, Florida Mayhem completely ditched Misfits altogether, from all of their players to the people in the front office. That's not been the case in the Dynasty's case, but when we're talking about the level of expectations on a fan base, or on a team in particular, I think that does outweigh what's been put on other players or other teams.
Yeah, like, I mean, take into account, okay, so you have Jonak, MVP of last season, was asked who's the best support player in the world. It's Jaehong.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what he said. Like, I get you talking about like the mayhem and stuff like that, but the mayhem, or the Misfits, Envy, all them, when they came in, they're at the same spot that Lunatic High is right now, not winning. And the face of the Lunatic High that for the Seoul Dynasty is Jayhawk. And you will always put it on the face of the team. Always. Like, and that's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to put, like, people blame Houston Outlaws. Who's the first person they go after? Jake. Raucous now, but Jake would be the first one. When the Valiant weren't performing as well, everyone's like, well, what about Custa? He's not playing right now. What happened to Custa? Like, they generate towards the face of the team. And by all accounts, Jaehong is probably the most liked player, one of the most liked players in the league. And he's dominant, but the failure of his team falls on him because he's the face of the team. And probably the best player on the team. Probably. Not saying for sure, certain, but he's probably the best player. So in that regard, yes, I want to say he's a bust. Like, Transport in chat said Flower's a bigger bust, but like, Flower was just hyped up coming in. He never actually played until stage 4, really. I don't consider that a bust if they're not actually playing. Like, I don't know. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that is a bigger bust. Like, Seoul Dynasty is probably the biggest bust as a team since the start of Overwatch League, because they started off as like the number one team, and then they slowly fell, and they've never been able to get to like the finals or the championships of any stage. Well, if that team is the biggest bust, then someone on that team is going to be the biggest bust. Now, I'm not saying I don't like Jaehong, because I love Jaehong. Like, I love him. It's just somebody has to be the biggest bust, and as the face of the biggest bust team, it kind of falls on him.
Yeah, the only issue is, since they are the only Korean squad, everyone knows Korea is a powerhouse country when it comes to competitive esports. And, you look at the track record with the Korean squads across the board, most of them have had issues. Granted, London took the title in the first season. It was not an easy season for them. New York collapsed a number of times throughout the year. And sure, like, maybe they're riding some other runs this year. But, you have London already down and out, Seoul's down and out. But at least with Seoul, they've been consistent with their performance, so it's always something to build off of, and they have improved season to season. I do think that this is a team that is going to level up the further we go in, the more that we're traveling, because a lot of people are going to want to be staying closer to home. So, like, there's a very good likelihood that Seoul could become, like, this super team, like they initially envisioned, but at the end of the day, the game has changed so much over the years. And when you dominate the scene for so long, it sets such lofty expectations. And, not everyone is going to be able to live up to that. Like, for instance, like, you look at Runaway, you look at how the Vancouver Titans have done. And it's kind of bittersweet, because, like, that was always how I wanted to see Lunatic High perform, but they never quite reached that level. But I wouldn't say that I've just been completely devastated by how the Dynasty have done. Am I upset that, they went 0-2? Absolutely. Am I upset that the Spitfire also did the same thing? Both made out right away? Absolutely. But not everyone is going to be able to carry that momentum. And I feel like the biggest difference that we have seen when you're comparing, like, these core rosters is the fact that you have a team like Runaway who has been dominant in so many different metas, and they just have such a good read on the game itself that it's very easy to translate and position themselves to be successful in the future, knowing how many moving parts there are for that team. Because, like, even benching Bumper and bringing in Tizzy, granted the Titans haven't looked as dominant, they're still coming up with ways to win in this new meta. And that's an edge that they have had on some of these other core rosters from Korea leading up to this point.
Yeah, like the future is super bright for Seoul because of them being the home team. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this next stage or season. Dang it! I had gone so long without doing that. It's one of those things where they just had a bad time. They need to go back, regroup, change some things, get all the free agents they possibly can, because all the Korean free agents are going to want to go there.
Sign Sparkle.
All right, sign Sparkle, but Sparkle can't play for 2 years. Like, he cannot play next season. So you can sign him, but you can stick him in contenders. But yes, sign Sparkle. Like, as much as I've ranted and raved about how amazing Decay is, Sparkle is so much higher than Decay.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find that spreadsheet I had in regards to the contenders.
To see what his actual age is.
Yeah, I'm not gonna find it off the top of my head.
I want to say he is not going to be 18 by the time he can play in Season 3.
Yeah, I'll double check on that after the fact, but, a lot of the prodigies are 16, 17. But with that being said...
Basically all a runaway.
There's a couple that are eligible. I'll double check on that front later, but let's talk more about what's been going on in the Path to Pro and the Overwatch League. So to start off, a couple of things. Like, I know they announced, like, the groups for the Gauntlet. That is taking place next month. We'll go into further detail with the Gauntlet and who's where and bracket predictions, all of that stuff when we get closer to that tournament. But in other Tier 2, Tier 3 news, we also have the return of Rivalcade, who are going to be doing a $500 qualifier as well as a $5,000 tournament. And this is going to be the first tournament that they have held since 2017. So we got the Rumble coming back. Qualifiers are taking place on September 21st. And the prizes are going to be rewarded to, like, the top 3 performers. And then the top 4 qualifying teams will be participating in the Rumble itself, which will take place on the 22nd. Now, in regards to this tournament organizer, they were running a lot of, like, NAEU tournaments on kind of like a weekly basis back in 2017. And for this one, it is going to be played on NA servers, but it is open to everyone. And, like, I'll be honest, like, there aren't, like, a ton of people signed up for this. Probably the most notable Tier 2 team posted and signed up so far is, like, Revival, aka X-Mayhem Academy. I know Bermuda also had, like, their Tier 3 team added to this. But there's been a lot of talk about certain organizers trying to put more money into the Path to Pro. Like, I know Elo Hell's doing a lot of stuff with this. Now we got the return of Rivalcade. So, maybe we're going to start to see them turning over a new leaf for support towards, like, the earlier stage in regards to the player progression.
Yeah, I mean, this is great. Getting more in the Tier 2, Tier 3 scene. I remember Rivalcade, like, it's not fresh in my mind, obviously, since it was, like, 2017, but I will say one of the memories I have of Rivalcade is Baby Bay. I want to say he was on, he was on the championship team. And I can't remember who won it back towards the end, but I remember. No, Splice? Started with an S. I think it was Splice, not Selfless Gaming. but like I want like that was one of my first memories was Baby Bay, playing, and that was my first chance to see him. And this is great. This is another thing that you can start to see this tier 2, tier 3 seed, and get to know some of these players, which I think everyone who really follows the Overwatch League wants to know.
Yeah, I was double checking. He was on Splice.
It was Splice.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where we want to know more about these people that are coming into the Overwatch League.
Mm-hmm.
It's why the NFL draft is so popular. Like, you want to know about these people coming in so you can form opinions on them before they're in the Overwatch League. Everyone knows about the heavy hitters like Alarm and Sparkle, those kind of players, but we want to know about the random players, like when the Spitfires signed Quartermain.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, who the hell is this guy? No one knows who he is except you. But you're the outlier in this.
I did find the spreadsheet, by the way. I'm looking at
Okay, how far do we have for Sparkle?
So Sparkle, born May 31st, 2002. He's good. He's eligible. He just wasn't eligible for Season 2.
When does that? So he's eligible to play in the start?
The
or
cutoff
midway
point,
through?
The cutoff point for Season 3 is June 15th. It would be mid-season.
Okay, somebody needs to sign him. Like, that needs to be your first signing. If he's not one of the first 3 people signed once free agency starts, oh, you're doing it wrong.
And in regards to Runaway, only one player is not eligible next season.
What?
Yeah, which is Assassin. Everyone else is. That's Hisu, Yaki, Shui, Mag, QQ, Gain Emjin, and Lee Jae-gon.
Okay. Well, I think the most important thing to take away from there is Sparkle. Because, like, I will cheer the hell out of Sparkle the second he gets into this league.
And you'll cheer him on during the gauntlet.
Yep. Despite some other people not being in the gauntlet. Like Gator. Look,
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Atlanta Academy is going to do, but we'll have more on that later.
Yeah, teaser. Gator's not allowed to play in the gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. Like, this is going to be the first real off-season we have.
Yeah, because everyone's going to...
Their 2-year contracts are up.
At this point, yeah. So people are going to be exercising their extensions, things like that. Then we'll see who's LFT at that point. But yeah, it'll be a crazy off-season. But getting back on track, we are in the middle of award season.
What?
We had the MVP and the Rookie of the Year both handed out this past week. And so first up, let's talk about the MVP. It went to none other, and get ready for your shocked Pikachu face, Sinatra. Sinatra was the winner, no surprise. China couldn't cast their votes for Gu Shui. It was pretty much a landslide. And Sinatra, he's been doing pretty damn good in regards to averages per 10 minutes. He's second overall with eliminations at 20.91. He's top 10 in the least amount of deaths over 10 minutes. He's top in damage per 10 minutes. And he won over, fellow Shock players like Super. He also had Janu, Twilight, and Gu Shui in the running for MVP. But, you look at this team, and, they were the only team to make it to every stage final. Whether they make it to the grand finals remains to be seen. But I have to say, like, I really enjoyed Sinatra's interview after the fact. You can sense how much this kid has really grown since we saw him last year. Because there was a lot of times when we could see like the immaturity from Sinatra, but he's definitely, I don't want to say he's grown up like extensively, but he does come across or just like give off a different like presence as opposed to what he had last year. And, back when people were memeing on him for these triple blink Tracer engages and getting shit on by Zenyatta players, all of that good stuff. But, it's worth noting, like, this was someone that was signed to the Shock when he was 17, months before he was even eligible to play. They basically built around Sinatraa. Sinatraa had, the whole 150k thing, and a lot of people were joking about them spending that much money to basically have a golden bench, essentially. But, across the course of the year, like, Sinatraa to me would have been my MVP, outside of the person that won Rookie of the Year, which we'll get into here in a minute.
Yeah, I can't argue with Sinatraa winning this, because he was just so dominant on Zarya. He wasn't my choice. My choice was Twilight. Not even part of the MVP discussion, really. Like, he was part of it, but he was so far at the bottom because of Sinatraa, Gushway, stuff like that. But I can't argue with this. He changed the way we played Zarya. Like, he made Zarya a DPS player. Mm-hmm. And the aggressive playstyle is something that we've never seen before. Like, we never saw this, let's go spawn camp them and just sit there and just wreak havoc on them. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what they did, and it works so well for them. I mean, if you think of it, the two most aggressive teams in Overwatch are the Titans and the Shock.
Mm-hmm. And both have really good Zaryas.
And both really good Zaryas, both super aggressive, and they both dominated. So Sinatraa really turned things around, because coming into this year, I think the majority of us thought that he was basically bench fodder. Like, we figured they brought in Striker to replace Sinatraa. And lo and behold, Sinatraa comes out and becomes probably the most vital part of that team.
And now they're playing both.
Exactly.
Who would have known?
So, I agree with I agree with him winning. Like, I'm not mad that he won. It's just he wasn't my choice. Mm-hmm. But, he did mature a lot. Especially, like you said, from the interview. Now it comes down to what Overwatch League skin we get. Do we get Zarya, Tracer, Doomfist? I'm going Zarya on this one.
I mean,
Zarya's the safe bet.
Based on the fact that he was Zarya for 3 stages, that definitely would be the safe bet. But people that knew him before that always do him as Tracer. But do we really need more Tracer skins in the game?
No.
We need more Zarya stuff.
Zarya does not have many skins. Zarya has the best...
many good skins. Like, she's part of, the Hot Topic trio. She's got, like, the totally 80s getup. But we need more.
She has the best emote in the game. And that's the one where she's unpacking the Christmas present. Mm-hmm. But it's, like, rotates between the 3. And, like, she gets the bear, little teddy bear, and then she hugs it real hard. Yeah. Best emote in the game. Better than that crap Orisa puppy one. Hate you guys who use that all the time. But, yeah, I would say Orisa. But it was good. Good for him. It's good to see a Western player get the MVP too. And a normally Korean-dominated league, it's good to see someone from, the West win it. Like, it's just not something you would have expected.
Well, I mean, the first 2 teams eliminated from the playoffs were Korean, so,
Exactly.
Maybe we're rewriting history.
No.
Well, we'll revisit that after the grand finals. After we probably have two Korean teams. But anyways, on to the Rookie of the Year. This was won by none other than Vancouver Titans DPS / Brigitte God Hoxel. No surprise. Like, he definitely would have been my pick. I would have preferred Hoxel in the MVP running, but you know what? He's still taking home Rookie of the Year, which is still really weird to say since I've been watching him for like 4 years. But you know, it's his first year in the Overwatch League, and that's just how the eligibility worked. So, you know, it's always funny revisiting the whole Brigida jail discussion. You know, some players absolutely hated it. You know, you had players that were very vocal about it. You had players that would just shut down, be a bot, like EQO, Hydration. And then you had someone like Hoxel, who's like, okay, let me show you how this is done. And then, you know, he was just being super aggro. He was riding right behind Bumper's aggressive Ryan play. So much to the point that even despite running Brigida for 3 stages, Hoxel's still finishing the top 10 in regards to eliminations, which is just dominated by a ton of the Zarya players, which I think tells you so much. Now, that did definitely impact, like, his damage, you know, where he finished there, so, like, he wasn't top 10 or anything on that front, or, you know, in healing, which you wouldn't expect from a Brigida player through 3 stages anyway. But Hoxel had led the league in regards to hero damage as well as healing per team fight because of his Brigida play. And, you know, it's always nice seeing him getting back to projectile role, which he was always known for. You know, we obviously saw that performance against the Florida Mayhem when he just completely dominated them with the Dragon Blades. The May's been looking pretty good. And, you know, on Genji, he's been leading the league in final blows. I know he had the highest player impact rating, which was their new rating system that they introduced in Stage 4. So, yeah, I'd say he's been doing pretty good this year. But this was a loaded field that you could have chosen from. But when we're just talking about an individual performance and having dominance on multiple roles, Hoxel is definitely the first player for me that comes to mind. The only other person that I would consider to have a similar effect would have been Rascal. But like he's seen a little bit of fall off in regards to playtime at this point, but he definitely had a similar impact, at least on Baptiste.
And all right, so before I get into this, I forgot to say something when we were talking about the MVP and it being a Western player that got it. Suck it, Korea. I had to get that in there, so it's not only me versus EU, it's me versus Korea now too. I don't mean it. Korea is way better than us at Overwatch. As far as Rookie of the Year goes, Haxel was the only one who could have won this. Like, you bring up Rascal, but Rascal played last year.
This is true.
So he was ineligible for
I was just talking about from, like, a particular impact role to role.
Yeah, like, was he a actual player last year? Not really.
Yeah.
Like, this was...
ineligible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in all essence, this was Rascal's rookie year, but he did play last year. But, I mean, I figured the Rookie of the Year had to come from Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have a rookie team that comes in and just dominates everyone. You have to pick somebody from that team. And Haxel is Carpe 2.0. He really is. Like, Carpe last year is the type of person who could pull off the Widowmaker 3v1 on the point and win.
Mm-hmm.
Haxel's that person now. Carpe's not. Carpe is still phenomenal, but Haxel is the new Carpe. Like, Haxel going into next year is the #1 DPS player in the league.
Right.
And, you know, he's proven it time and time again. Like, he took the Baguette role and took it to a whole new level that I don't think any of us thought Baguette could go to, from, like, the game-changing performance aspect. And he did it. And then he goes on Genji, and we all know where that went. Like, whatever he touches turns to gold. He's the Midas touch
Yeah,
of the Overwatch League.
like, we've seen big names, like, I know there was a lot of hype behind Decay, but I didn't have Decay in the run-in. I'm trying to think, like, really outside of that. Like, I know Nero's been fairly consistent this year, but he also hasn't been playing every single map like we've seen with Hoxel. I mean, Hoxel's put in, like, 30 hours on stage.
You know who would probably be my second choice? Marvel. Like, he's the one who kind of stepped up, and he took the main tank role for Seoul to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm.
You could always go Gushue, too. Like, Gushue was in the MVP talks, and he was a rookie.
I wonder if they tried to, like, shy away from overlap in that regard.
Probably. And I think they were ecstatic that they had a choice that wasn't. Like they had an obvious choice that wasn't part of that whole discussion. You know, whether it be, hey, let's keep Haxel out of the MVP race because we're going to give him this and we don't want it to intertwine type of situation.
Well, they knew Sinatra was going to win anyway.
Yeah. And they, you know, and then they bring in two Vancouver Titans into the MVP race anyway. So, you know, whatever. But yeah, no, Haxel deserved the hell out of this. Violet's another one that could have probably gotten it. Although, did Violet play last year at all?
I'm not sure. Last year is like a far gone memory at this point. I'm still too focused on two of my teams already being eliminated, and I can't even think about last year.
Hey, I still got a team in it. And my team brought your team to tears.
I mean, consider that all of my teams were playing on one day, and we're gonna force two of my teams in the lower bracket anyway. It's just like, oh well. But anyways, we do have some coaching updates across the league. So I'm gonna quickly go over these, and I want to get your thoughts on what this is gonna mean in regards to the future for these teams. So we got changes for the LA Valiant, the Boston Uprising, and also your Hanjo Spark, aka the Fingerbangs. So first up, LA Valiant. They have promoted Pack-10, who had been serving as their interim head coach for the majority of the season. So, you know, Valiant to start out the year went 0-7. They got rid of their head coach, who was Moon at the time. And then Pack-In was promoted to interim head coach from his assistant coaching spot. So just a quick rundown of the Valiant season. Obviously, they had the 0-7 start. They prompted changes from, you know, coaching staff to their roster. They shied away from the mixed roster to focus on that Western talent. And then it went out, they picked up Promise to add to their coaching staff. They went out and got Shax, Fact Fiction, and they were one game away from making the play. It's not that it would have mattered, since the top seeds advanced from the play-in anyways, so that's kind of a moot point. So outside of that, you have a team like Boston, who have basically been operating without an official head coach ever since Krusty went to the Shock back in May of 2018. This is a team that have gone 12-26 in the regular season. That's not to say that they didn't have a decent-sized coach and stuff, because they had Shake, Mini, Goomba, and Spackle. But none of them were actually officially named the head coach for this team. So Boston, they have turned to the former Florida Mayhem head coach, Mineral. So he's going to be serving as their new head coach. And with the Mayhem, they went 8-39 with Mineral as their head coach. You look at how the Uprising have done. Well, they finished the season 8-20 and only secured one win in the second half of this season, which of course would include a winless stage. So we'll see how that plays into the Boston mentality, which we'd like to bring up quite a bit. And for the Spark, they officially signed U4, who has been working with this team since the end of Stage 2. He was the first head coach of the Shanghai Dragons, and he basically stepped down following their 0-14 start last year. But I know he's been busy in Contenders China, and he's also been helping the Spark head coach along the way with tactics, gameplay training, and also like VOD reviews, things like that. So, we have basically 3 teams here that are all kind of in different positions in the league. You have your team who has been bottom of the barrel, pulling from probably not the best run org, if I'm being honest, at least in the inaugural season. You have the LA Valiant, who have been fairly well run, I would say, but they had their fair share of struggles. But that was a team that turned their season around. But starting 0-7 in a 28-game season, pretty hard to advance into the playoffs, all things considered. But they came really close. And then you have the Spark, who might not have been the best Chinese team, but China across the board, like, their expansion teams actually did fairly well this year, and, they have the Chinese presence of Gushui leading the way on, like, this Korean squad, which is not something that you expect to see. So, out of these changes, which one do you feel like is going to have the biggest impact moving forward on these teams?
I mean, and I hate to say this, Mineral, the packing signing was a no-brainer, really, from the Valiant's perspective. They went 0-7, fired Moon, bring in packing, and they almost make the playoffs. Like, it was a no-brainer. They did so well that you need to give him the opportunity with a full season before you can fully judge it. So that was like a no-brainer. Like, until they announced this, I had completely forgot that the Valiant didn't have an actual full-time coach. So, whatever. The U4 thing is interesting, but I think that was more done to, handle more of the Chinese, like, because they're going to be going to China next year, and he can deal with the Gushui, and you need that correlation, like with a team with all Koreans and one Chinese player. If you have one of your coaches being Chinese, like, relations and coaching and contenders, stuff like that, he can build that up. So that was good. But I mean, Mineral getting signed as the new head coach of the Boston Uprising is probably the biggest impact signing out of the 3. We talked about the Boston Uprising and their need to buy low, sell high mentality.
Right.
And this screams buy low, sell high. It's one of those things where, do I expect Fusions to be on the team next year? No. Do I expect Color Hex to be on the team next year? No. These are players I expect them to ship off for money or other players or whatever may come from it. It's like they're built around getting these young players, hopefully doing well enough to earn some money, and then the ones who excel, sending them off to other teams for money. You signed a coach from a historically bad team, the second worst team in the Overwatch League last year. You just signed the head coach from them. And the only reason he was probably a head coach is because he was the coach before they came in. Like, so it's not like he earned it in the Overwatch League. He earned it with a pre-Overwatch League team and then got brought in. And failed miserably. The whole team basically got dumped. And so did the coach. And Boston's like, you know what? I bet you we can get this coach on the cheap. And then if the team does well, we can either A, get rid of him for cheap, or B, he'll sign or we'll sell him to another team for a profit. And that's just the mentality the Boston Uprising have. And it's not a bad mentality from a business standpoint, from a fan standpoint, it's infuriating. But from a business standpoint, it's smart. It's what they do. Like, I think the closest thing I can compare it to is, yes, I'm going to talk about another sport now. Is the Clippers of old, like the Clippers from back in the day. This is what they did, and now the Clippers were never a good team, but they were always profitable because anytime they'd get a good player, they'd sell it off. They'd trade them, get younger assets, spend less money. They made a boatload of money, but they were never really that competitive. Does that sound like anyone you know? Like, outside of one fluke stage, this is the Boston Uprising. So, I don't know. This has the biggest chance to be an impact, but I give it under a 50% chance that Mineral's the coach by the end of stage 2.
I will say the only move that Boston has made that was to someone's benefit was Stryker getting the hell out of Dodge. But in regards to impact for someone on Boston, I mean, it's really hard to come up with something, just because the track record kind of speaks for itself at this point.
I'm just going to point this out. As a non-Patriot fan, Trenchfoot in chat wrote, they're waiting to luck into Tom Brady on the cheap, and then a historically bad coach turn him to a Hall of Famer.
That can happen. I don't know if it will happen across sports in New England, but you never know.
I mean, it just depends, Maybe Mineral is the Bill Belichick of Overwatch. I'm gonna go with no. Can you underinflate a mouse? Is that something you can do?
The real question is, years down the line, when we have one particular coach that is posting like a 70% win rate, across the board.
Krusty.
I feel like Krusty is the safest bet.
And the reason I say Krusty is because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Shock roster signed through next year too? Like, I want to say their owner came out. I remember
them saying something about that.
Like, I think their ownership came out and said that their core roster is signed through next year. So they won't be losing.
That spawned from someone reaching out to teams asking why they should cheer for them, and that was the response that they got from Energy.
And if the Shock can go into next year with the same team, that is a 70% win rate team. Yeah. So yes, and who came from Boston? Krusty. So, that would make it. So if Krusty becomes the best coach, if Krusty becomes the new Bill Belichick, that makes Boston Uprising the Cleveland Browns. And you know what? They have a lot of similarities.
They do.
So the Boston Uprising are the Cleveland Browns of the Overwatch League.
So then, who at that point will become their Odell Beckham? Who's gonna be the star player?
Blase, because what will happen is Color Hex will get traded away, and then Blase will step up, and everyone will be like, "What is Blase doing?" And then Boston will trade him for 2 contenders players to be named later. So this is how it works.
Or Boston just won't spend the money.
Also very possible.
Who knows? But anyways, let's talk about the playoffs. So, we are in week 2. We got to talk about week 1. Where are we now? Well, we got 2 teams eliminated. That would be your defending champions, who failed at defending, London Spitfire, and the Seoul Dynasty.
Wah, wah.
So both of the teams that advanced through the play-in tournament have been eliminated from the 2019 OWL playoffs. So you have the Dynasty. They lost initially to the Vancouver Titans 4-2. And then the Hangzhou Spark, specifically Bazi in particular, completely annihilated the Dynasty in that series in the lower bracket, with the Spark picking up the win 4-1. Now for the Spitfire, they did not do well against New York in the opening round. They lost that one 4-1. And then they got swept by a very pissed off San Francisco Shock team in the lower bracket. More on that later. So that one went 4-0. Now, we already talked about Bird Rain getting benched, essentially. We did get to see Guard coming in and playing DPS. And, it's so weird how, there was so much talk about the Shanghai Dragons being, the best team to, in regards to the current meta, but then, the play-in tournament meta has not directly translated to what we're seeing in the Overwatch League playoffs. So we're not seeing, the Pharaoh Doomfist all the time like we were kind of seeing in the play-in tournament. We're seeing a ton of Doomfist, which London actually did pretty good against in the play-in. But they suffered against the Farah, and then sure enough, Farah's out of the mix, and then London still struggled, so feels bad men in that moment. But it's so crazy how in the current playoffs, you basically have all your ducks in a row, because you have all the highest seeds advancing perfectly. And so many of us just thought going in, okay, we're destined for the Titans and the Shock to be in the grand finals. Now, that is still possible, but, everyone was kind of looking at Atlanta, and we're like, okay, there's potential in this team, but very few people were predicting Atlanta to go over the Shock. And, we'll talk about the moment that kind of caused that, and how Rialto is a cursed map for the Shock. But that particular outcome shattered so many brackets. It was unbelievable. And then you have a team like New York, who have strung together some wins and are actually in the winners' finals this week. So it's been a very interesting week of Overwatch League.
Yeah, it's been interesting. You saw the Spitfire. Honestly, the biggest takeaway that I had from the Spitfire losing was how bad does this make the Philadelphia Fusion look?
Mm-hmm.
And as weird as that sounds, it's true. Because, all right, the Spitfire got rolled by New York, got rolled by the Shock. They took Shanghai versus Spitfire. We thought that was one of the best matchups we've ever seen. And knowing what we know about the Spitfire, how bad is the Shanghai Dragons? That the Spitfire were able to beat them. Then reversely, Shanghai won over Philly 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very telling, that LA, or that London was very telling for the previous teams. I think the right teams probably won in the losers bracket. Sorry, Totem.
Mm-hmm.
Spark probably deserved to win over Seoul.
I would agree.
Through all that, and the Shock definitely deserved to win over the Spitfire. I don't think anyone was shocked that they won. I think everyone expected them to win. So yeah, this loser bracket is turning out to be the most interesting thing of the playoffs. And I don't think anyone's surprised by that, but the teams that are in the losers bracket is what is surprising people. Because
the only other thing that would have made it more surprising if Titans and Shock were both in the lower bracket at this point in time, which is not the case because the Shock are still down there. Titans are in the upper finals. Now that being said, we saw a really awesome back and forth series between the LA Gladiators and the Hanzhou Spark, which did knock the Spark down to the lower bracket where they did eliminate the Dynasty. And, the Gladiators have been a very interesting team throughout these playoffs. I know, the wild card situation for the Gladiators was going to be how they were going to use hydration. Because, we didn't know, is he going to be the Doomfist? Is he going to be the Sigma? And it's been a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, where we're primarily seeing Void and Roar playing as the tank duo. And then on, select maps, we see Hydration swapping roles, playing the Sigma on this team. But it's really been that aggression that has been the standout lane for the Gladiators. Now, that being said, there have been teams that have been able to adapt to that aggression, that have been able to punish it, like the Titans. But it has thrown some teams for a loop, and when it comes to the playoffs, adaptability is 100% key. And honestly, that's one of the big reasons why we've seen New York do as well as they have so far in the playoffs. But, with that Gladiator Spark series, I think either one of those teams probably would have edged Dynasty, knowing that we did see some struggles from the Dynasty DPS, just not getting clean engages. And, the Doomfist play from both, Hydration and Bozzy had, at least in the playoffs, been more potent and more effective with their engagers as opposed to what we saw from Fitz, despite him being, honestly, one of the bigger standouts throughout the play-in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Gladiators were the wild card, I think, coming into all this. Because, like you said, nobody knew what they were going to do with Hydration. And we definitely saw Hydration in different aspects, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
And, the Spark, the Gladiators for Spark, I think we talked about this, how it was a complete toss-up going into this game. And when you saw the matchup, it was a complete toss-up. You could have gone either way with this matchup. And everyone would have understood. Now, granted, the Gladiators went up to lose to the Titans, get knocked out, and will probably get knocked out by the San Francisco Shock in the losers bracket. But, the Gladiators, I think, overthink things to detriment. They try and come up with these interesting strats, or let's put Hydration on DPS, then put Hydration on off tank, and then try and mix and match, and it just screws with things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Gladiators are a team that could really benefit from picking a lineup, sticking with that lineup, and just working on that way. This is probably something they'll have to deal with come next season, because they're not long for the playoffs, despite my love of Decay. And Decay being amazing.
Just not as amazing as the Bidden War would have expected you to believe.
True. I will say that. But like Hoxel. Hoxel embraced, obviously, big at more.
Mm-hmm.
Decay, if Genji or more DPS was meta coming into this season, I think Decay would have been probably on the same level as Haxel. It's the fact that he wasn't the Zarya or Beget God that he just wasn't brought to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would love Decay Haxel Genji off. That would be amazing. We won't get it. But that would still be amazing.
And if you did, it would be with foam swords.
Yes, foam swords, not real swords.
So outside of that, we saw the Atlanta Reign in a grueling 7-map series against the Shock, and this one did go in favor of Atlanta. This was the bracket buster match. I think you could technically put New York and London in that category too, because a lot of people were favoring London given their track record against New York, and New York's narrative in the playoffs. But what was awesome about this is these two teams were just trading map wins back and forth, which did go in favor of Atlanta. But man, Rialto, there's been so much talk. The Shock looked like they were in control. They had to like hold for like 4 minutes on the final point, and we all know Rialto's not the easiest map to complete. And then there was kind of a little bit of an incident where Shock just couldn't touch the cart. And part of that was Gator's accretion throw. You had Mazah, who was in position to boop them back, all of that good stuff. But the look on Moth's face after that moment basically said more than I could ever say about it. Like, it was just a gutting way to, like, end the series. And, Rialto has not been a kind map to this team. They lost to the Titans in the Stage 1 Finals, also in a Map 7 on that map. Happened here, knocked them down to the lower bracket. And, they were so close to winning that fight, too, with Violet just about to get his Coalescence. Airster and Mazah had already been picked off. They had a lot of the remaining, Rain players below half health. It was just a culmination of those scenes, and, Atlanta, they made the play, they pushed it in, and they advanced. And eventually would go up against New York in the next round, which was another interesting narrative and storyline that I thought was going to play out in the lower bracket. But at least my prediction on that front was correct, with New York actually getting the best of them. But when we're talking about like these back and forth series, to me, I like the Rain Shock game more than the Gladiator Spark one, and this was like a good precedent to, kind of like a motivating factor for like the Shock, and to see how that team was going to be able to rebound, because a moment like that, to lose in that fashion, there are teams out there that will just crumble after a moment like that. Even if it's like early on in the tournament, if it happens in the finals, it's probably to a worse extent, just because there would be that much more on the line. But you could tell the next time the Shock came out on stage, they were not too happy, and they shouldn't have been after they lost in that sort of fashion.
Yeah, the whole... I don't get the Shock. This is one thing that is baffling to me, and this goes back to the... why mess with a good thing? Like, the coaching decisions that Krusty and We Not Trusty made, I just don't get.
In what regard?
I don't get Striker.
Okay.
I just don't. Nebik's coming in for Choyobin. I don't get it. I just don't. Like, Choyobin has probably been one of the top 3 off tanks in the league, and it's not like he has a true weakness in off tank.
Well, he's gold.
Well, besides that, he placed in gold. He doesn't have a weakness in off tank. Like, he's strong in all of them. Like, I don't get that. And why change it up when you know that, it's a playoffs, it's win or die type of situation? Why try and throw a curveball at people by playing Striker? Just never played.
The thing for me with the Shock is, we've actually seen everyone fielded on this roster, and I don't know how much I want to read into this, but it's just like, knowing that already going into the playoffs, you wouldn't know who they were going to field to begin with. Now, I'm not as, like, down against, like, Striker coming into play. The Nevik situation is kind of like a different story, just because Troy Gobin's just been super consistent throughout the entirety of the season. Like, that to me was more of the questionable one. The Striker one, not as much. But, part of that's also just the fact that we just didn't expect it. But I can't say, like, Striker has been, like, the primary, like, glaring weakness on the Shock. It's just the fact that you have a team like Atlanta who, very similar to like what New York has done, is very off-kilter with the way that they approach the game. You know, they've been one of the few teams who actually incorporate the Symmetra in the current meta to a fairly good success at this point. Whereas other teams that have tried to use it have gotten completely shit on. So I think it's just a culmination of the way that their opposition goes about playing the game, where they feel like they need to try to match them in that regard.
Yeah, I hate them taking super out too. I get what you're trying to say about it. It's just they're messing with something that doesn't need to be messed with. Like super. Are you telling me that the difference between Smurf and Super on Orisa is that drastic? Probably not.
I will say it's more the fact that Orisa has been Smurf's primary tank.
And I can see that. But sometimes you need that aggressive Orisa. And you know what? I get made fun of for this, but Orisa can be aggressive. Dang it. Like, sometimes to fit the play style of the team, you need to basically maybe take somebody who's less skilled at a certain hero, but fits the play style of the team more. And that's what Super would do over Smurf.
At the end of the day, regardless of which main tank has been benched, whether it's on the Shock or on the Titans, also, because Tizzy has been playing every map, neither one of them have been this year's iRemix on their teams. Now, if they would come in and they would fall 0-2, then yes, I would say, okay, now is the time to, like, do we make the swap? But we haven't seen those particular teams in that position as of yet.
Yeah, it hasn't been drastic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, drastically horrible. So, I will say that. It's just, when you think Striker, also, you don't think Reaper Specialist. No.
There's honestly not a lot of people in the Overwatch League that I'd be like, you know what, this guy, Reaper Specialist.
But that's essentially what they brought him in to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they played Reaper so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams primarily opting Reaper Doomfist in the playoffs.
So, like, are we supposed to expect Striker to be a Reaper Specialist now? Because if that's the case,
only for
it
the
did not go that did not go that well. And then the last thing I will say about the Shock is, or this matchup is, I agree with you. I went back after we talked about it on last night's show. On what did we all buy the numbers? Tuesdays, 8 o'clock Central. It was not a C9. It 100% was not.
The accretion completely effed.
Yeah, like that accretion caused them to. I mean, it caused them to C9, but it wasn't a C9. Mm-hmm. It just, the accretion caused them. They were sending Moth back to touch the point because they would have won. They would have won the fight.
They would have clutched it out.
One person to touch. And that secretion screwed it all up.
Yeah, it's just the fact that they had held on for like 4 minutes that just was an exclamation point to that moment, you know?
Yes. Trenchfoot in chat is right. It's a Sig 9.
Yeah, that turns out rock throw's pretty good.
It's decent. When you're trying to hit somebody getting back to the point so they can't extend the overtime.
Mm-hmm.
So, Shock is gonna wreck some fools coming up, though.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. New York, winning in the playoffs. And what's going on? I know you and I are of two different minds on this front. I know you're not convinced yet, and part of that has been in regards to the way that the Excelsior have gone about incorporating specific strategies. So which strat in particular are you referring to? I'm assuming you're talking about the tank situation. The literal tank. The literal tank.
Like, alright, let's get this out of the way. The attack bastion. That is what... Alright. I'm not sold on them because I feel they came into this week 1 of the playoffs for them. And they came out with attack bastion, and it was more of a shock factor than anything. And it was more like, okay, the other team just doesn't know how to deal with the attack bastion. But now you give them a week to be like, okay, if they're running attack bastion, switch to this. And it completely counters it.
The one thing I will say is, going into this past weekend, every time I would look at a bracket that was generated, either by community members, other podcasters, random people on Twitter, the amount of people that had New York going 0-2 was substantial. Like, people were not favoring them over London, for the majority. A lot of people assumed that the Shock were going to beat Atlanta, and everyone had that mindset, well, Atlanta's beaten this team twice already this year, ergo, they're going to win again. That didn't happen either. So it's just like, if you're the Excelsior, there's so much pressure on this team, obviously, just due to some of their past issues in the playoffs. But it's also a motivating factor, especially when they were going up against Atlanta. Like, I'm so happy we're seeing the redemption arc. And, like, one of the points that I brought up last night was, New York's not the only team that's trying to go a little bit off meta or off kilter. Like, we saw the same thing out of Atlanta. Turns out New York has just done it better. Now, can that work longevity-wise? So far, so good. But, we're going into this week where they are facing the Titans, who, at their core, have been probably the most adaptable team in the Overwatch scene for, an extensive amount of time at this point. So, at the end of the day, this particular series for the upper finals will be the most telling moment for New York. I feel like it can still work. It's just a matter of, has New York actually put themselves into the position to be seen as favorites again, or is this just wool over people's eyes, Like, I don't know. Like, I do have New York beating Vancouver, which is kind of a hot take, especially since I'm a huge Runaway fan. But I want to be... I both loathe and I love the idea of just seeing the Shock or Titans go home based in the lower bracket, which is not something anyone would have predicted. I want that unpredictable factor, which has been basically the culmination of the playoffs already. I want to see that extend.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the Titans versus New York, and it's, the Titans are New York's white whale. Like, really, like, for New York, the reason so many people pick New York to lose and go 0-2 is because history. It's what they do. Like, it's like a meme, running meme at this point is New York losing it in the playoffs. So if you go through so much of them losing, it goes from meme to fact at a certain point.
Gladiators won in the playoffs for the first time.
Yeah, but nobody was picking them to blow through the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where New York, I think everyone knows New York has the talent to do it. but they need to see it first because they've been burned in the past.
Yeah, seeing is believing.
Yeah. Would I be shocked if New York won it all? No. Am I going to bet that New York wins it all? Hell no. Because I am a logical person like 20% of the time. And you know what? I've known what New York has done to us. They've put on fun matches. They've put on good matches. They're an interesting team to watch now. It's just they've burned us. And I cannot put trust in a team that's burned me. You know, I can't. I just can't. And they've done nothing but prove us right this entire season. Basically losing in the first round of every playoff round. Like, they're making the point for critics like us at this point. So, prove me wrong, and then I'll believe you, New York.
I'm trying to see if betting odds are up for the current week's games. But moving into this week, so we got a lot of matches again this week. Not as many as last week. But we basically start off on Thursday with the continuation of the lower bracket. So we have Atlanta Reign going up against the Hangzhou Spark. Winner go home match for both of these teams. Then we have the LA Gladiators versus the San Francisco Shock, also winner go home. So after that, moving into Friday, we have the upper bracket finals. So the winner of this advances to the grand finals. That would be between Vancouver Titans and New York Excelsior. And then on Saturday, we have one game. So that would be the winner between the Reign and Spark versus the winner of Gladiators and Shock. And then on Sunday, we got the lower bracket finals. So whoever loses between the Titans and Excelsior versus whoever comes out on top of that Saturday game. Now, I am pulling up the odds just because I'm curious to see who is favored. And it looks right now... Okay, see, I don't like when they don't have it, like the minus 100 or whatever. It has the decimal points. This does not help me. But I will say, favored right now, in these matches, they have Atlanta, Shock, and Titans. Now, I know the Atlanta Hangzhou game in particular is pretty interesting. I feel like the Spark DPS has been overlooked throughout these playoffs. And, you know, Reign have been pretty much who we expected them to be. They still have that upset potential. Gladiators versus Shock, I feel like, you know, we're both on board with the Shock winning that one. But, you know, who are you expecting to come out ahead in these matches through the lower bracket to go up against the loser of Titans Excelsior?
I'm expecting the Shock to come out. I think that's a reasonable thing. I think the Reign have a shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Reign will beat the Spark. Just for the simple fact of the Spark don't have a good Sigma play. Like, Rhea's been playing Sigma, but he hasn't been playing it well. So I think the Reign will come through and beat the Spark, and then I fully expect the Shock to beat the Gladiators. And if it's Shock versus Reign, I mean, I have no reason not to think the Shock will win. I have zero reason to think the Shock won't beat the Reign.
I will be laughing my way home if we end up getting, like, Excelsior Reign for the finals.
I mean, for the league, I think that actually is the best case scenario.
In regards to the any given Sunday mantra?
No, I think it's more towards the
growth of the league.
The growth of the league and the future rivalries. You know, if you have the New York versus Reign in the finals, it builds towards next year towards that rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Because even coming into the playoffs, we were talking about, well, New York has beaten the Reign. What's going on here? It's the redemption story. Well, now they're meeting in the finals in the championship game for everything. Who's going to win? Like, and then they come in next year. It's like, let's say New York beats Atlanta. Then it's going to be like, can Atlanta avenge their loss in the championship next year to New York? Like, it's good for the league. The Titans and the Shock already have that rivalry because of basically they've been fighting the entire season. They don't need to fight each other in the grand finales to have a rivalry between them.
Right.
The Shock or the Excelsior versus Reign need that rivalry in the championship game because their games have not been on the highest stage. Like, it's been more like regular season, once in the playoffs, in the first round type of thing. And I think that would be great. I think worst case scenario, the Spark or the Gladiators make it through. From the Overwatch League perspective, because let's be real, the league wants specific teams to make it. They're not going to influence it, but they want specific teams to make it. And they want their more marketable teams to make it. The worst case scenario, the Gladiators make it.
I'm waiting for a situation to happen when someone makes a role swap but they don't announce it and then they get disqualified for a map. Like, that would be just the absolute worst thing. But you have to think, at some point, it's going to happen with Rollbuck.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah, that mandatory.
Like, even if they don't officially change in lobby, like, if the players, like, swap seats,
They're just like, this is awkward. Weird.
And that would be a Gladiators thing to do, because that would be to like the situation because of hydration.
Flipping hydration.
Or, it could be Shock with Rascal. You never know.
Yeah, but he has to play more than one map.
This is also true.
Yeah. Can't have Striker in there playing Reaper the entire time.
Or maybe, Sinatra will move over to Reinhardt. You never know. Like in the World
That's
Cup.
only if Reinhardt comes into play and Super isn't playing.
He just moves past the shields, just like Doomfist.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Continue the argument from OWL by the numbers between me and Ramses. Zarya. Ugh. So aggressive.
Yeah, so for me, doing quick pick'ems, I like the Sparks odds against the Reign. That one, honestly, though, like, Reign are just such a hard team to get a read on. Like, I didn't expect them to beat the Shock. They probably shouldn't have beaten the Shock, but that was a lot closer than we were anticipating. Spark have looked better than I would have expected. Shock over Gladiators. I'm thinking Excelsior taking over the Titans. Which would give Spark, Shock, I'll say Shock, which would set up Titan, Shock, and, in that case, you already know who I'm going to vote for in that regard. We got to tie up the series with Titans taking that, which would set up an upper bracket finals rematch for the grand finals.
Mm-hmm.
In my situation.
I think everyone's kind of under the impression it's gonna end up being the final three are gonna be
the top
Vancouver. Yeah, top three is gonna be Vancouver, New York, and the Shock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think everyone's kind of come to that decision. But if anything is for certain, we are wrong. Because we have been wrong this entire playoffs. And it's not just me and you.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's been wrong this entire playoffs. Like, you had talked about, like, New York getting redemption over Atlanta. You had predicted that.
I did.
In the losers bracket, not in the winners bracket.
But you know what? It's still a 50% right prediction.
50% of the time.
Which
it's
is
right
more
every
than
time.
what others can say, so I will take it.
So, like, it's one of those things. It's the NCAA bracket lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this is great. I love the fact that they're doing losers brackets with all this, and it's not single elimination.
Right.
Like, they've knocked these playoffs out of the park.
Yeah, the format situation this year, so much better for the league.
Mm-hmm. So much better than last season.
Yeah, but like if we're following the trend of the playoffs based on seeding, that should give us Reign advancing, Shock advancing, Titans over Excelsior, Shock over Atlanta, and then Excelsior beating the Shock in the lower bracket. We'll see.
Boo.
I don't think it's gonna actually play out that way perfectly with seeding, but man, would that be like the odd cherry on top, seeing the seed perfectly laid out across the entirety of it.
I think I almost want, if the Shock make it to the losers final, I kind of want New York to beat the Titans, because I want to see Shock versus Titans one more time.
Mm-hmm.
So
even if it's not an official like rubber match, since the Shock
exactly,
are,
I just want to see, because there has not been a matchup that's mattered between these two teams that wasn't amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, they played in stage 4, but honestly, neither one of the teams were giving two shits about it.
Yeah, kind of like the whole Titans Excelsior game that was
Exactly. Basically, the Titans in all of stage 4.
Let's just throw anything and everything at one another, including the kitchen sink at this point. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Basically.
Good times. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see whose bracket for week 2 comes out on top this week. But you know, the upset potential is always there. But you know, if it plays out like it has been, probably not.
Probably not.
And like, who knows? Or maybe maybe the lower bracket in the second half is just gonna flip the script, and then none of this is gonna be correct, and then we're just gonna feel like complete idiots next week.
The Spark are gonna win.
Like imagine a situation where we get like Spark. Like, I don't even know. Like, here's the thing. Like the lower bracket like let's say Spark win out the lower bracket. Like that would be the biggest surprise. I would feel like, since they've been criminally underrated. It's just a matter of who you favor in Titans Excelsior. But the unlikely situation would be Excelsior Spark in the grand finals. But that would be an absolutely surreal storyline, knowing that Hancha basically went from China's last hope to China's best hope in the grand finals and also in the future. And how crazy that would be, seeing a Chinese-led Korean team beating an actual Korean team
from New York.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be great. And the thing is I would be, if the Spark make the finals, you're not going to hear the end of it from me.
Mm-hmm.
Not like you heard the end of it from me anyway, but, this would be a special occasion.
Yeah. It would just echo through the rifts of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how it would go.
I'd run around with maybe a flag. I'd need to get a Hanzo Spark flag.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to worry about ordering that from Blizzard and not fitting like everything else I get from them. Not bitter at all.
I like how, like, I was like, I bet you half of that stuff will fit, and then we were both wrong.
Yeah, so, alright, I ordered 5 things during the whatever massive sale from Blizzard.
The Labor Day sale.
The Labor Day sale.
Mm-hmm.
I bought 5 things, 3 of them don't even remotely fit. And I ordered them a size up. And I'm just like, shit. So then I put in for them to return. Now I'm waiting to hear back from them. And I just want my Blizzard stuff to fit without being like, I'm going to order it 3 sizes over what I normally wear.
You're going to have to, like, create a spreadsheet based on what item you're ordering. So in the future, you know how many sizes up you need to do for each individual item. So, shirts, jerseys, hoodies,
Yeah, like
bomber
if it's
jackets.
hoodies or zip-ups, order 3 sizes higher than what you normally wear. And you should be safe. Should be.
Oh, something I forgot to mention. We do have new Jinx Ultimate hoodies coming out here in a couple of weeks. I want to say it was like September 26th. I know I posted it in Discord.
Those I might order.
We'll see if those get leaked ahead of time. But as soon as they're unveiled, we'll let you know all about them. But keep an eye out for those here in the upcoming weeks. Because I know, like, I've ordered a couple. Like, I have the Mercy one, which is really nice. Well, the problem is, it's very white. It can get very dirty quickly. That's, like, the only white hoodie I have. Most of them are, black and red. But the Ultimate hoodies are very good quality from Drink, so I highly recommend you guys check those out if you do not own any Overwatch hoodies. But, we'll have more on that later. But with that being said, I think it's time that we get out of Dodge, because I know, like, the storms are rolling in, and, there's been tornado warnings, all that good stuff. Not in my area, but to the east. So, if you guys want to help us out, couple of things. One of the best things to do is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We're always looking for constructive criticism in order to improve the overall quality of the show. So let us know how we're doing, all of that good stuff. So iTunes, best platform to do it. We do have like the my podcast reviews, so it will pull from iTunes, Stitcher, all of that stuff, regardless of what area you're in as well. As opposed to, like, individually, like, switching what iTunes store we're in, so it collects everything, so, that's a big plus. Now, outside of that, we do have our podcast directory, which focuses on Overwatch-related content, that being none other than Overwatch Recall. So there you can find the Overwatch, Overwatch League, Path to Pro, Fantasy OWL podcast on our website at owlnshow.com/OWRecall. And then every Sunday night or Monday mornings or early afternoons, we do the weekly recall, where you can find a listing of all the prior episodes released from that past week. So to keep up with the latest podcast stuff in the Overwatch scene, be sure to follow Overwatch Recall on Twitter at OWRecall. Now, if you would like to support our podcast network, we have a number of different ways how you can do that. It is September over on Twitch. So, there's half off subs. You can also throw Twitch Prime subs our way. That's always greatly appreciated. And outside of that, we do have a Patreon page where we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. So more info can be found at patreon.com/OWL Network. So you too can join the likes of our master and above patrons, Blazabob, Brendan, Jay-Z, Owl Kesha, all those good people in helping our network grow. So thank you again for all of your continued support from month to month. So, be sure to check that stuff out. And outside of that, we got a lot of stuff going on in regards to social media. So, Ed, why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know how they can reach us?
All right, so you can reach us through email at hndoverwatch@gmail.com. We are on Twitter, and that's at @hndoverwatch. We do have our website where we post all our VODs, any of our YouTube stuff at owlnshow.com. We do have our YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. So make sure to go over there, check out any of the YouTube videos we post. I know Spider has posted a deep dive on Sigma, so go check out Toe Jam. And then we are on Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. So come over there, harass us, mainly harass me, and then watch everyone support you in harassing me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with this. As Totem said, we're on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. So we are a Twitch affiliate. So this is September. So come help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. We do stream pretty regularly. So Overwatch League Network is Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. OWL by the Numbers airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific. That will be coming to an end sometime soon because that's based on Fantasy Overwatch League.
At some point this month.
At some point this month, it will come to an end. So come check that out. And then we have this show, obviously, Heroes Never Die, which airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams, when available, run on a flex schedule. So be sure to follow us on Discord and Twitter and see when we go live.
Yeah, you know, that might open up a little bit.
With no Overwatch League?
Playoffs, yeah.
Yeah, I feel there's going to be a little bit more streaming when we don't have to watch, 5 days worth of Overwatch
I mean,
League.
It's not that you have to, it's you want to.
All right, we want to. It would be too distracting for us to stream, play games, and watch the Overwatch League at the same time.
This is true.
So, like Toteman also said, we are on Patreon at patreon.com/Overwatch, patreon.com/OWL Network. Mm-hmm. So if you want to help us support the show even further, come over there. Tier starter just $1 a month. You can contact me personally on Twitter, and that's at @EdinarOverwatch. Totem, where can they find you at?
Well, I am also on Twitter at TotemlyDrunkCTR. With that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for joining us tonight on another episode of Heroes Never Die. This has been episode number 177. I've been your host, Tumbly Drunk, joined, as always, by my co-host, Edinar. And we hope to see you guys back on Monday for our next Owl Network, when we break down how wrong our predictions were, like we have been throughout the playoffs so far.
Yeah, they'll be wrong.
Some of them. Maybe not all of them. It's just
50%.
a matter of, will they be the bulk or the minority? That remains to be seen. But enjoy the playoffs, guys. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Have a good one.